Venezuela on high alert. The massive military move against a possible U.S. invasion. The world is once again watching Latin America with tense eyes. Venezuela has just announced a massive military deployment, claiming it's ready to stop what it calls a possible U.S. attack. From missile units on land to naval warships at sea, and even civilians joining the defense, the Maduro government says it's prepared for anything. But what exactly is going on between Venezuela and the United States this time? Why is the U.S. moving aircraft carriers into the Caribbean? And could this escalating tension push the two countries to the brink of war? Stay tuned, because what's happening now could change the balance of power in the Americas forever. On Tuesday, Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino Lopez made a bold declaration. He announced that Venezuelans' armed forces are on full alert to prevent any kind of aggression or military incursion by the United States. In his statement, Pedrino said that Venezuela would begin a large-scale mobilization of troops across land, air, and sea. This includes not only the regular military, but also missile defense units, police forces, militias, and even trained civilian groups. It's a show of strength unlike anything Venezuela has done in recent years, and it's clearly meant as a warning to Washington. According to the statement, the goal is simple: to defend national sovereignty and prevent any invasion that could threaten the government of President Nicolas Maduro. But what exactly triggered this sudden military buildup? The answer lies just offshore, in the waters of the Caribbean. At the center of this growing tension is one massive American warship, the USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest aircraft carrier in the world. The Pentagon confirmed that this nuclear-powered carrier has entered the Caribbean Sea, bringing with it around 4,000 sailors and dozens of fighter jets. While U.S. officials insist it's just a regional security operation, Venezuelan leaders see something far more dangerous: the prelude to an invasion. The timing couldn't be more sensitive. Since Donald Trump began his second term as president this January, relations between Washington and Caracas have grown increasingly hostile. Trump's administration has accused Maduro of running a corrupt regime, supporting criminal networks, and destabilizing neighboring countries. To Venezuela, though, the U.S. presence looks like history repeating itself, another attempt by Washington to remove a government it doesn't like. And what makes this even more alarming is where those U.S. forces are gathering, just miles away from Venezuelan shores. In the past few weeks, U.S. military activity around the Caribbean and Central America has increased dramatically. Reports confirm troop movements and exercises near Puerto Rico, El Salvador, Panama, and Trinidad and Tobago. The U.S. says these are anti-drug operations, aimed at intercepting smugglers and protecting American borders. However, Venezuelan officials claim this explanation is nothing more than a cover-up for a larger strategy. Even more controversially, U.S. officials have linked President Maduro to a notorious Venezuelan criminal organization called Tren de Aragua. The gang is accused of smuggling, extortion, and human trafficking, but its presence in the U.S. is reportedly minimal. Still, Washington has used that claim to justify increased patrols and airstrikes in nearby waters. To Caracas, this looks like a carefully crafted narrative, one meant to paint Venezuela as a threat and therefore justify a potential intervention. But as Washington tightens its grip, Venezuela is not sitting quietly. It's pushing back harder than ever. Maduro and his allies are accusing the United States of imperialist ambitions, of using the war on drugs as a pretext to expand its control in Latin America. They claim that the U.S. has been conducting air and naval strikes in the region since early September, targeting what it calls drug trafficking vessels. According to reports, the U.S. military has carried out at least 19 airstrikes in the Caribbean Sea and the Eastern Pacific Ocean over the past few months. These strikes have destroyed several ships and tragically resulted in the deaths of around 75 people, many of whom Caracas insists were civilians or fishermen. The Maduro government argues that these actions violate international maritime law and threaten the stability of the region. Meanwhile, the Trump administration maintains that it's defending U.S. national security interests. But the question remains, could this standoff turn into an actual war? The signs are more serious than many realize. Inside the White House, discussions about Venezuela have intensified. While President Trump publicly denied any immediate plan to launch an attack, sources inside Washington suggest that a ground operation has been considered as a future option. Analysts warn that such an operation would be highly controversial, not only politically but also legally. International law experts have already said that a U.S. military strike inside Venezuela would likely violate international norms, especially without United Nations approval. And public opinion in the United States doesn't support it either. A recent YouGov poll found that 47% of Americans oppose any ground invasion of Venezuela, while only 19% said they would support such an action. That means even among U.S. citizens, there's widespread skepticism about the idea of another foreign intervention. So if both sides keep escalating, what could happen next? The next chapter could define Latin America's future. This confrontation between the U.S. and Venezuela isn't just about politics, it's about power, resources, and influence. Venezuela holds one of the largest oil reserves in the world, and that alone makes it a strategic prize. For years, Washington has imposed economic sanctions and political pressure to isolate the Maduro government. But each time, Caracas has managed to survive, often with support from Russia, China, and Iran. Now, as U.S. warships patrol the Caribbean and Venezuelan troops mobilize at the border, the stage seems set for a new kind of Cold War in Latin America. Whether this ends in open conflict or a tense standoff depends on what both governments do in the coming weeks. And as the world watches, one question echoes louder than ever. Will this be the spark that reignites a global confrontation? This is a developing story, and both nations are standing firm. Venezuela insists it will defend its sovereignty at any cost, while the U.S. claims it's simply protecting regional stability. Only time will tell whether these military maneuvers end with diplomacy or disaster. If you want more updates on this escalating situation between Washington and Caracas, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned because the next move could change everything.